Welcome back, everyone. Tim Anderson here, aka Renville, sometimes known as the bearded dwarven princess, in the dark of my office room with the lights turned down low because we're reviewing episode 6 of Rings of Power, and it's a darker episode, so it's a little apt that we do it this way. Welcome back to those of you who are returning. For those of you who are new, here's how I do things. I give two reviews of the show. One is the review from the biased perspective of me being a Tolkien fan, looking at the show through the lens of that Tolkien fan, of saying, are they following the lore? Are they breaking the lore? What's going on here? Are there interesting things, redeemable qualities, or is it all trash like last week's episode with the ridiculousness of the mithril retcon? And then the other review is the unbiased review of sort of looking at this through the lens of a generic fantasy show, and does it have redeemable qualities there, or is it also trash? Typically, the biased reviews have been much lower, whereas the fantasy reviews have been higher because when you strip away the lore, this is kind of a generic fantasy show, so those tend to be a little higher. Again, Chris, my wife, has never read the books, and she's giving this show pretty much across the board like sevens and eights on an episode to episode basis because she doesn't have the lore association that I do. So we kind of try to do things in both ways, of me being the lore person, and then looking at it through her lens as well, and doing both of those reviews, which are at the end. So if you're only interested in that, you can skip to the end and get to that point. But in the meantime, we're going to be going through the whole episode. And as always, spoiler alert, we're going to be talking about all the things here. So if you don't want anything spoiled, walk away now. And before we dive in, this is the point of the video where I say thanks to all of these people for being supportive of this channel, keeping me going. As of the end of September, I am now wrapping up my 4th month of full-time here on YouTube. So thanks to everybody. You too can support. It's super simple. On premieres like this, you can do super chats and stickers down there in the chat window, just like you can on a live stream. And after the fact, you can drop a super thanks. There's other ways you can support as well, which we'll talk about at the end of the video. But in the meantime, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon so that you never miss an update. Without further ado, you've had your warning, you've had your spoiler notes. I'm going to go into reading my notes here, and we're going to get into this right away. So, we start this episode with Adar planting some seeds and saying something in Elvish, new life and defiance of death. I didn't quite understand what he was going on about until later on, when Arendir explains that this is an elven custom, and that before battle, the elves will plant these seeds, which he carries some around in his pouch as well. And it appears that Adar, despite his separation from his old ways, still holds to some traditions. But Adar also seems to have this obsession with creating new life and being the father. And going back to the commentary we had with the first episode where he was um, introduced to us, he mentioned working towards becoming a new god. More on this as we get deeper into this episode, because there is a little bit, I think, at play here with what he thinks is going on. Um, Stunning visuals here again. The orc masks are epic. We see some really great um, VFX and just great costuming, and from a the people who are behind this, which is Weta, doing some of the orcs and stuff on here. They're doing a great job as always. I think the orcs here look much better than they do in Peter Jackson's films, but that's just 20 plus years of developing their skills. The music is great, tasty, tasty visuals. This is a spectacle. It looks really, really good from a visual storytelling perspective. Um, they attack, the watchtower area. Of course, it's been abandoned, and there's this, I don't know. There's this sequence which I fast forwarded through where Arendir has set up this trap and manages to bring down the tower and everything else. There's this excessive action sequence where he takes out a slew of the orcs, but you know that Adar, of course, is going to survive. But I also feel like, why and how? Because he's like suddenly this action hero, and yet he got captured by the orcs beforehand when he was in the tunnels. So it just seems like a contradiction. Um, the next sequence is the boats on the sea sailing from Middle Earth, and there's this sequence where Isildur has an encounter with Galadriel, which feels like a generic scene that was just written so that we can have him pining for the old days of the real Numenor, and having this sequence with Galadriel. It just felt like filler content But again, stunning visuals as they approach the coastline of Middle Earth. It looked very well here. And then we're back to Arondir, who's trying to destroy this sword of Sauron, breaks his hammer on it, vows to hide it. More bullshit Bronwyn speeches as she tries to rally the people. And this is the major disconnect with me because I just can't buy her as the new leader of her people because she's out here giving military speeches when she was nothing but a healer before, and it's just not believable. Um, she was nothing but a healer. And for that, I just have a hard time seeing her suddenly being at the forefront of all of this. There's also this whole scene, which is very cliched, about Theo. He wants to fight, and she's just like, "No, you're my little baby, and you need to stay behind to protect the people." And um, there's a romance scene between Arondir and Bronwyn here, which honestly, I'm gonna make a joke here because as much as I love Star Wars, this scene felt like it was written by George Lucas. It felt as bad and as cringy as the dialogue in the Clone Wars. It's bad. Um, but this is where we get the sequence of Arondir explaining the seed tradition, which shows the link between him and Adar. And there's the sequence where I want to be with you and Theo, and she's like, "Promise me." And literally, what flashed into my head was the scene from Team America. I promise I will never die. And of course, the follow up to that scene, which we can't talk about on this channel because that's not for kids. Um, Again, the whole sequence here with Bronwyn attacking like she's some type of soldier, like where does she get her military training? And it feels like this was just a strong woman sequence just to put in to fill a quota because I'm not buying it at all. And this is just basically a blah 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 by the numbers action sequence. Kill some orcs, blah blah blah. Bronwyn saves Arondir, blah blah blah. Villages prevail, blah blah blah. Realize not all of the attackers were orcs. Some of them were the humans. Now there's a second wave. They have to retreat into the cavern. Bronwyn gets shot. Who cares? The orcs now attack. They capture everybody. They come into the tavern. Adar requests a sword. Arondir's like, "No, I'm not going to give it to you." And then he starts killing all the people, threatens to kill Bronwyn. Cliche, cliche, cliche. Theo gives in. Here's the sword. Adar holds it. And here comes the Numenoreans who suddenly are cavalry people on top of being navigators, like they're the riders of Rohan at all. I also just don't get why the queen gives permission to Isildur to join the fight, because why would she do that if he's just a stable hand? I don't know. Halbrand saves Elendil. Now it's a chase scene. Galadriel's chasing Adar. Halbrand's rushing after. Together they, basically Halbrand brings down Adar's horse. And as he's standing over him with a spear, he's like, "Do you remember me?" And Adar's like, "No," which is interesting, especially for what comes later. Galadriel won't let him kill the elf. He's like, "You don't know what he did." And no, we don't. We get this sequence where Galadriel is questioning Adar. And this is the one part where I will say I kind of liked what they did here, even though some people will see this as fluff. But this is an area where it's one of the rare occasions, probably the only occasion, where I'm going to give them credit where credit is due. Because we get a confirmation that Adar is one of the first elves turned by Morgoth. She calls him the Moriondor, the Sons of the Dark, the first orcs in the Uruk. We get some Sauron story here as well, but what I really liked about this sequence, and again, I'm giving credit where credit is due, is this is an area where we actually don't have a lot of information. And it was kind of cool to see this sort of theory that's been floated for years based on a tiny little section of notes where it's changed over the years here and there. But talking about Morgoth creating the first orcs as they were elves and they were tortured, and this is a confirmation of that. But Adar claims in this whole sequence, he claims that he killed Sauron. He basically gives a speech about how Sauron was trying to create this perfect world, this perfect order in the wake of Morgoth's defeat, and he was sacrificing everyone and everything around him, but he couldn't quite get his hands on it. He couldn't quite figure it out. And Adar says, "I'd had enough. He took in too many of my children, so I killed him." Galadriel doesn't buy it. She gives this whole speech about, you guys are just corrupted creatures, should have never been created. I'm going to kill all of you and threaten to kill all of them while you watch, and then I'm going to kill you at the very end. which is just her being a terrorist, basically. And he tells her that. He's like, "You're just as consumed by darkness as I am." Halbrand then stops her from killing Adar, and as they walk away, Adar literally asks Halbrand, "Who are you?" Because he genuinely doesn't seem to remember, which I feel like this is some other foreshadowing, because it's almost like they're saying, like, is this more Sauron foreshadowing? Like, because Adar thinks he killed Sauron, and Halbrand's like, "Do you not remember me? Can you not tell it's me? It's your old friend that you tried to kill." Like, I don't know. I hope not. It's way too many red herrings, but we'll see. Um, this is where we also get confirmation Bronwyn doesn't know Halbrand, so my theory of Theo being his son, this abandoned son, just got thrown out the window because Bronwyn genuinely doesn't know who Halbrand is. She just wants to know if he really is the king they were promised, and he reluctantly says yes, confirming that he is, of course, the Kmart version of Aragorn, the budget king. Um, there's this sequence where Arondir and Theon are talking about the sword. It's wrapped up in this cloth. Um, and he's talking about how he misses the presence of the sword, the power, and Arondir's like, "Don't worry about it. We're gonna toss this thing into the sea on the Numenorean's voyage home." Theo goes to unwrap it. Turns out it's not the sword in the bag. It was an axe. And then we find the old man, the old Sauron lover, down in the ruins, summoning the blade forth with his blood and then plunging it into a stone like a key and turning it, opening something within the ruins. We see stone moving, coming down. Water starts pouring out of this dam, going down the rivers and going down through all of the tunnels and going underground and pouring into a pit of lava and then creating this massive explosion which blows the top of this mountain, creating a volcano. And this is what I'm looking at this going, there's the creation of Mount Doom, everybody. You're confirming it here, the creation of Mount Doom. And as the pyroblast comes towards the village, that's when we get a fade to black as Galadriel stands there in the face of the storm, like, "Yeah, you can't hurt me." I don't know. Um, so on a lore front, I will give this episode a 5 out of 10. I don't really feel like they broke too much here. Um, but again, there's so much wrong with the way the Numenoreans are being treated and Galadriel again just being ridiculous. But I did really like the confirmation of the creation of the first orcs and Adar being confirmed as one of those that Morgoth tainted. So that part I found very, very interesting, and I'm going to give him credit for that. So that kind of redeemed it a little bit in my eyes. So from a biased standpoint, I'm giving this one a 5 out of 10. Because I did feel like they didn't break more than they already have, and then we added to that, which is kind of an interesting thing. Now, from an unbiased perspective, I think I would have to stick with another, like, honestly, my gut reaction is like probably another, 7 out of 10. Chris hasn't watched the episode yet, so I can't give her perspective on it. She's been hovering around sevens and eights the whole time. So I'd have to say like a 7 of 8 because there were some, even though I fast forwarded through them because I'll watch it again with her later on and I'll get the full effect then. But the action sequences felt a little forced here, but they're there and the flow of things is cool. If you are into all of this, visually, we got tons of great visuals this episode, more great soundtrack from Bears McCreary, um, some decent flow of storylines here and there. The writing in some places was okay, but in other places was really bad, which is why I can't give it more than a 7. And then, of course, if this is the creation of Mount Doom, I find this an interesting way to go about that sort of origin story. So I don't know. So, biased review 5 out of 10, unbiased review 7 out of 10. Love to hear your thoughts. Drop them down in the comments below. And again, if you want to support the channel like all of these people, it's super simple. On premieres like this, super chats and stickers, just like on a live stream. Do super thanks after the fact. You can join as a member of the Adventurers Guild down there for $2.99 a month. And membership is a great way to support because it's like a monthly subscription. We do member videos every Saturday. We also have a Patreon page for what I'm working on with my wife and my brother. It's the World of the Weave and the Void. You can check that out. It's our 5th edition tabletop setting, point and click adventure game, and a book series all be done through our Patreon page. So hopefully see you there. And don't forget, every Monday at 11 a.m. we do the Mondays in Middle-earth series as I read through The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, and the Silmarillion so that I can better review this show and other things beyond. So Stay tuned for all that, folks, everybody, and I'll see you Monday morning, bright and early at 6 a.m. for another Rings of Power rant video, and then the next episode of Mondays in Middle Earth. Until then, happy viewing. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.